Hi everybody, back again. So I know I just included the math interest uh, video on YouTube so you can check that out. But I also wanted to go ahead and upload the math antics ratios video, which is awesome. And I am going to play that for you. And we'll see what his suggestions are. I like usually how he explains things. He's really animated, but
Still
that's
searching
cool.
YouTube for math help? Are the videos from 2006
Bear
really
with me.
Hi, welcome to Math Antics. In this lesson, we're going to learn about ratios. Well, what in the world's a ratio? Well, let's look it up in a math book to find out. It says here that a ratio is a comparison of two numbers by division. Well, that's true, but it's also a little confusing. And it's confusing because most of us think of comparing numbers as trying to decide if a number is greater than, less than, or equal to another number. But with ratios, we're not trying to compare numbers like that. Instead, we're really trying to see how two numbers relate to each other. And so at Mathantics, we like to think of ratios as a relationship between two numbers by division. Okay, but how do you compare or show how two numbers are related by division? Well, to see what the by division part really means, let's look at an example of a ratio. Excuse me, that's not a ratio, that's a fraction. Oh, it's a ratio all right. Mathematically, ratios and fractions are basically the same thing. It's just that when we use a fraction in a particular way, we call it a ratio. Well, sure, everybody knows that. Well, like I was saying, ratios are basically just like fractions. The difference is how we use them to describe things in the real world. To see what I mean, let's look at examples of how we could use the fraction 1 over 2 and the ratio 1 over 2. Mathematically, these are both the same thing. They're just the division problem, 1 divided by 2. But in the case of the fraction, we usually treat it as if it's just a single number. For example, at lunchtime, you might eat one sandwich, or if you're really hungry, you might eat two sandwiches. But if you're not very hungry, you might just have half a sandwich. We can use the fraction 1/2, just like we use 1 or 2 to show how many sandwiches you eat. It's just that in the case of 1/2, we know that it's only part of a sandwich, just a fraction of one. Now let's see how we can use the ratio 1 over 2. With the ratio, we don't treat it as if it's just a single number. Instead, we pay close attention to the top and bottom numbers because we use them to refer to different things. For example, let's say we're planning to go on a picnic, and for every 2 people that are going on the picnic, we're only bringing one sandwich. In that case, we'd say that the ratio of sandwiches to people is 1 to 2, or one sandwich per 2 people. Do you see the difference between our fraction and our ratio? The math part of each of them is the same. But with the fraction, both the top and bottom numbers are referring to the same thing, the sandwich. However, with the ratio, the top and bottom numbers are referring to different things, sandwiches and people. The fraction shows a part of something, but the ratio shows a relationship or a comparison between two different things. And you can see that they're the same thing mathematically, because if you did have the ratio of one sandwich for every 2 people on a picnic, guess how much of a sandwich each person would get? Yep, half a sandwich. All right, so now you know that fractions and ratios are basically the same thing. But since they're used differently in math, sometimes they're also shown differently. Once in a while, instead of seeing the standard division form, a ratio might be represented with this symbol. When you see a ratio written this way, it just means 1 to 2 or 1 per 2. For example, in this picture, you could say that the ratio of dogs to cats is 3 to 2. 3 dogs to 2 cats. And you could also write it in the standard division form, 3 dogs over 2 cats. They're just different ways to write the same ratio. Ratios are used all the time to represent all sorts of things in real-world situations. So let's see a few more examples to help you really understand what ratios are. Have you ever wanted to compare apples to oranges, but someone told you you couldn't? Well, you can with a ratio. Now let's say a fruit stand sells 5 apples for every 3 oranges they sell. The ratio of apples to oranges would be 5 to 3. Or, have you ever helped someone bake cookies? The recipe might tell you that for every 2 cups of flour, you need 1 cup of sugar. That means that the ratio of flour to sugar is 2 to 1. Or, what about your TV screen or your computer monitor? Have you ever heard someone say that the size or aspect ratio is 16 to 9? 16 to 9 is the ratio of the screen's width to its height. So if the screen is 16 inches wide, then its height would be 9 inches tall. Here's another good ratio that you might use in your car. 40 miles per hour. Aha! Didn't you say that a ratio was a relationship between 2 numbers? But 40 miles per hour is just 1 number. Looks like someone's got some explaining to do. Actually, there are 2 numbers. Do you remember how any number can be written like a fraction just by writing 1 as the bottom number? Well, 40 miles per hour is the ratio 40 miles per 1 hour. Well, I guess you have an answer for everything, don't you? 40 miles per 1 hour is a type of ratio that we call a rate. A rate is just a ratio that usually involves a period of time. Here are some common examples of rates. 10 meters per second, $12 per hour, 3 meals per day, 50 games per year. Notice that the bottom numbers in each of these ratios relate to a period of time. Seconds, hours, days, years. And that's why we call them a rate. Alright, so that's simple enough. But you might be wondering, why are the bottom numbers of all these rates 1? Couldn't you have a rate like 90 meters per 9 seconds? Or $60 per 5 hours? We sure could. But most of the time, when we have rates like that, we want to convert them into an equivalent rate that has 1 as the bottom number. And that's because whenever the bottom number represents only 1 unit of time, like 1 hour or 1 day, it makes comparing different rates much easier. For example, imagine 2 cars driving at 2 different rates. The first car's rate is 120 miles per 3 hours, and the second car's rate is 150 miles per 5 hours. Which car is going faster? Well, it's not all that easy to tell when the rates have different bottom numbers. Fortunately, it's really easy to change a rate so that it has 1 as the bottom number. All you have to do is divide the top number by the bottom number.
Okay, let's stop there. So we did learn a couple of things. The gentleman from this video says that fractions and ratios are not really different things. They're similar, right? They're almost the same thing, but they're used differently. So that was something that I like the way he really explained that and how he broke that down. I don't know if I've heard it done that way. So it's more of a relationship between the 2 numbers versus the fraction, right? The fraction just means a part of. Also, though, he just went into what's the difference between a ratio and a rate. And the rate, right, if you remember, does anyone remember the rate? So the rate included time, right? So adding another variable versus the ratio by itself did not have time. So I do want us to look at the worksheet that I gave you. Again, it has the ratio on it and proportion as well. I think, again, this video helps a lot, but there are other videos. And what I do, I go to YouTube usually, right? I'll find Math Antics. That's like my go-to guy. I don't know if you can see it here. But if you just type in on YouTube ratios and proportions, he's not the only one, right, who explains math, and you might find someone that you like better. So I just typed in ratios and proportions.
Good to see you. Yeah, hey, what's
Skip the commercial in just a second.
What do you mean? Polka dots are out. It's polka.
So here's this gentleman again, right? He always has the blackboard, which I like.
Things like that.
But then also we have Khan Academy. Those are standard. It's used by a lot of instructors.
Ratios.
So that's another
ratios are
choice.
Expressions that compare quantities. So
that might just be a
So if you're ever searching, right, even though we've done some explanations, but you need more, always know that you can look some things up, and YouTube is a great source, right? And then from there, I also like BrainPop, and really your lessons were pulled from BrainPop. I know some of you just didn't have the video yet, so it's brainpop.com, or you couldn't access videos like you wanted to from your phone. But when you have access, right, when you can look at everything, BrainPop is totally free. It's for classrooms, but they have the science, math, social studies, English, even things like art included. So I pulled your worksheets from this site. So the videos from brainpop.com also work. So I'm just going to pull up some of that. So the math, right, we just talked about ratio, proportion, percent. And look, interest, which there was one video on that. So all of what you need is also on BrainPop. I'm going to stick with this site. I like the fact that they do have videos, they have quizzes, and everything really built in, and it is for free for teachers, but also students. And that's brainpop.com. So when you have a chance, and if you can even just do it from your phone, look at it. You know, you can sign up, and it's free again. You can log in. But once you pull it up, you can tell, like, you can just start clicking on things. And you don't have to wait on our lessons. If you see a subject and you want to move forward with it, that's totally okay. But we did do percents, and we did ratios, right? And we did interest for this lesson for week 15, our current week. But again, there's taxes, there's mortgages, right? I know a couple of you are looking to buy homes, so that's really exciting. So just a few resources for you. I want you to know that it's there, but I'll be printing out those sheets as well for you, so don't worry. And if you have questions, just know that you can contact me anytime. Again, check your YouTube, on the YouTube page, which is under my name, Angel Christian, at least twice a week, because I'll be uploading things as needed. And if you let me know you want a video or you're looking for something, I'll totally get it on YouTube. Either it will be me talking and instructing, or I will find another video to link to. I think that is all for now, but I look forward to putting some more things up and talking to you all soon.